When conducting a historiographical analysis of the evolution of judicial confinement institutionalizations, we identify two major periods that mark the application of punishments in their various forms: the old regime that emerged from the first civilizations in the ancient world, passing through the Middle Ages until the end of the modern age. Meanwhile, the new regime is characterized by a paradigm shift in current criminal law practices. From the contemporary age to the present, throughout time, the judicialization of confinement went through three stages. The first corresponds to the jail, considered the oldest of institutions, whose sole purpose according to the legislation of the time was to detain the accused while they awaited trial. This stage encompasses the entire period of the old regime until the beginning of the emancipation process from the Spanish crown, symbolized in America with the disappearance of the Cabildo. Various historical events in Western Europe, especially in France at the end of the Middle Ages, promoted the consolidation of modern legal language and the emergence of punitive power as an expression of emerging social control. Among these, thanks to canon law, the figure of reclusion was introduced for the fulfillment of civil sentences in a prison, to begin differentiating from the gaol. A superficial change in language is observed, but not in forms. Since the old practices of the old regime persisted, this time applied to the condemned who could pay the right of imprisonment, while the rest faced an unknown fate. Faced with such atrocities, ideological currents began to emerge at the end of the 18th century with the purpose of changing the antiquated model, unifying the execution of penalties with the principle of deprivation of liberty. To this effect, various correctionalist and reformist methods were applied until, with positivism, the new regime was put into practice with cellular or Philadelphia confinement and later the application of the Auburn system. This continued until the incorporation of progressive regime with resocializing purposes was achieved in 1933. This system was called penitentiary with the most modern building structure of the time. This proves that jail and prison are not synonymous with penitentiary, since they correspond to different times and contexts. Their function, nature and purpose differ significantly. In recent decades, the imprecise dissemination of these terms has caused confusion, even among penitentiary agents themselves. We must take into account that the history of penitentiary centers dates back to the end of the 18th century, when scientific methods began to be applied. Understanding that history does not evolve in a linear fashion, but is the product of progressive change, as a consequence of a process that encompasses the mentioned stages. But like every process has an end, it is necessary that in this century we find ourselves distanced from the anachronistic terms of jail and prison, to focus only on the penitentiary as an institution.